Welcome to part 2 of Jim Burns' webinar on Caucasian rugs. For those of you who've joined New England Rug Society webinars before, you know there's a brief period of a few minutes happening right now while we wait for everybody to join. And I watch our audience members joining us. Once most people have joined, we will actually start the webinar. So stay patient, stay tuned. We have another real treat for everyone today with Jim Burns. Welcome everyone as you continue to join. I'm watching the numbers until most of us have joined, and then we'll be starting our webinar today with Jim Burns. Welcome as everybody logs into our webinar today. We're just waiting for our big crowd of attendees to get online, and then we'll be starting. Again, welcome to everyone who is joining. We do have a wonderfully large audience to hear Jim Burns today, so it does take a few minutes for people to log in, and that's what's happening. And we are waiting with great expectation to get everyone in so that Jim can start his talk today. This will be part 2 of our 2-part webinar on Caucasian rugs with Jim Burns. Very pleased to have such an enthusiastic audience, a lot of people from a lot of places, and so much enthusiasm, many emails to Jim, to myself, and such great interest in Caucasian rugs. It's really fun how these webinars bring people together from today. I think we have 36 countries represented in our audience. Something that would be very hard to have were we all in person. So let us begin. Official welcome to every one of you who has made time today to join the New England Rug Society's second webinar with Jim Burns, Caucasian Rugs, 6 decades of Jim's perspective on design and taste. We're so pleased to have you. We have a big audience. We have people from 36 countries, including people from the Caucasus. We're delighted to have you. And our first ever audience member from Barbados. So welcome to everyone today. Before I turn this over to my colleague at the New England Rug Society, Julia Bailey, who will introduce Jim for part 2 of a 2-part webinar, a few housekeeping matters. Both parts of our webinar today, the Caucasian Rug 2-part series, in fact, all of our webinars are recorded, and the recordings are available to members of the New England Rug Society. They are only available to members, and the links and passcodes to the recordings are sent out after each webinar. We do welcome everyone to join the New England Rug Society. So if you would like to watch webinars at a time of your choosing, or God forbid you missed part 1 of Jim Burns, which was wonderful, please, we are welcoming you to join the New England Rug Society and be able to have access to those recordings. Today, after Jim finishes his formal talk, we will, as always, take some questions. Any questions must be submitted in writing, and the questions must be submitted only through the Q&A function in Zoom. We do not take any questions in chat. If you have a technical problem, please put that in chat. Again, questions only in Q&A, and I will be reading those questions to Jim after he has finished his talk. You're welcome to type them in at any time, but they will only be addressed at the end. If anyone has a desire to change what they are seeing, you can go to the little view icon in the top right of your Zoom screen and adjust your view. Speaker side by side is often a good view, and you can move the divider over so that you maximize the presentation part. Thank you. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Julia.
Thanks, Jean. On behalf of the New England Rug Society, it's my pleasure to introduce, or rather reintroduce, today's speaker, Jim Burns. As you may have heard last week in part 1 of this webinar, Jim is a Seattle lawyer, but he's much better known to the rug community as a prominent collector and the author of 3 major books about his collection. The earliest, published in 1987, is titled The Caucasus, Traditions in Weaving. In this webinar, Jim has returned to that area. Today, he will present his rugs from the East Caucasus, and I can promise you're in for many visual delights. So without further ado, please join me again from wherever you are in welcoming Jim Burns. Over to you, Jim.
Good day, rug enthusiasts. We're going to visit the Eastern Caucasus today and look at some of this wonderful art that was produced there. And we'll look at this map again that I had for my book, 1987. And you see the eastern part of the Caucasus bordering the Caspian Sea. We're going to visit the rugs of Dagestan, Shirvan, Kuba, Baku, Talish. We'll start with the Shirvan. The reason we start with Shirvan was it was the most prosperous of the Khanates. And for centuries, the Caucasus was a possession of Persia. And but we're going to go into a little history about Shirvan. to explain a couple of things. One, why the rugs are not so proficient, and two, the borrowing of different other countries' designs that appear in the Shirvan rugs. The Shirvan area was let me get back here. The Shirvan area was the wealthiest district. The climate was very good for raising all sorts of agricultural products, and the topography was such that it was not a mountainous area like most of the other areas of the Caucasus. It was very rich in agriculture. They raised cotton, which was a staple crop that couldn't be raised in the mountainous areas. They raised fields of crocus for the saffron, so they could dye this beautiful yellow that the saffron produces. The people over in the west of the Caucasus mostly used wildflower, which grew in the mountains, but the wildflower was not as vivid as the crocus saffron. So they also had a big business with caviar, which they supplied both Russia and Persia from the sturgeon in the Caspian Sea. And for centuries, it was just a province of the Persians. And but in 1578, the Ottomans came in, conquered the area, and they were there from 1578 to 1607. And the Ottomans not only ruled the country, but they took booty, to wit, sheep, rugs, anything they could handle. And it was kind of a bad time for the Khans, the regional Khans that lost their power during that time. And then in 1607, the Safavids took over the area, and it became again a province of Persia from basically 1607 to 1723. And in that time, the Persians came in, and they did a variety of things. Not only did they take rugs out of the area, but they also brought Armenians out to Persia, to Isfahan, to weave rugs, and Georgian women, because they were beautiful. So they were ransacking the country. So in 1723, Russia came in and annexed the area. A year later, the Ottomans came back and drove the Russians out. And then in 1735, Nader Shah, Persian, defeated the Ottomans, and Shirvan and the other provinces went back to Persia. Now, this is one of the reasons why we have so few rugs and textiles from the area when the Ottomans, the Russians, and the Persians owned this area, because they took the rugs and so forth. So Shirvan comes back to Persia, and the regional Khans come back to power. And they took over the Caucasus in 1735 and basically had 80 years of occupation by them. And basically from 1735 to 1815. Now, this is a time frame that I think is the golden years of Caucasian weaving, because these Khans, not only in Shirvan, but the other provinces, had rugs. That was their art. Like we in the Western world have paintings and so forth, this was their art. And they vied with each other to have the best pieces. the best wool, the best silks, the best quality, the best dyers. And this 80 years, to me, is the area that is the best in the Caucasus for weavings. What I call the golden era. So in 1820, the Russians actually were starting to take over the Caucasus around 1805. But in Shirvan, they had the regional Khan, Mustafa, had some power, but the Russians were, every year, it seemed like they were taking more control. And so they started taxing the people, and from there on. And what happened was that the people's wealth, basically, a lot of the people's wealth was in sheep. And so the way they paid the taxes was the sheep were taken. And so you can imagine what that did for the rug industries when these people are losing their sheep to the Russians for taxes. So for a few years, Mustafa played ball with both Russia and Persia. And something happened, I don't know what, that he really angered the Russians. And so they sent in troops. And about 1820. So Mustafa fled to Persia with his rugs. And that was a time of really turmoil. The Khans, most of them were being deposed. Some of them were going to Tabriz, some were going to Constantinople, which was called at the time. I talked with one relative of a Khan, and their family went to London. So they dispersed, they took the rugs with them, but of course they had to leave their real wealth, which was the land and the sheep and the products that they were producing. So Persia was angry about losing Shirvan. So they started a war with Russia in 1826, and it went on for 2 years. Persians lost the war, and the Russians took over all of Azerbaijan. And all these different ethnic groups were all of a sudden under real Russian control. So basically, in Shirvan, the urban population spoke Persian, and the rural population spoke different Caucasian languages. We will see today designs borrowed from the Ottomans, from the Turkestan, and from Persia, and the indigenous designs that the Caucasian people had for centuries. This first carpet, arabesque and palmette carpet, was carbon dated to 1697. It came up for auction at Sotheby's in London. I was in a long trial as usual, and I asked Michael Francis to examine it, and he reported that it had silk warps and wefts, but it was extremely dirty. The Sotheby's missed the silk warps and wefts part, and fortunately for me, Michael bought it for me. It's unique weaving. There's nothing comparable. But you see, it has a Persian quality to it. The flowers and so forth are curvilinear rather than geometric like we expect from the Caucasus. And neither Michael nor me, neither of us knew exactly where it was from. I thought it was probably a Persianate type of workshop, maybe in Azerbaijan. I actually had it in my Persian book because I thought it was a Persian production. Michael did some more interesting research on the piece, and he found out that it belonged to a French collector named Jules Mignon, who collected in the 18th and early 19th century. He was noted to be given 60 of his pieces to the Art Decoratif in Paris. Michael is the best researcher of carpets that I know. And his rug library probably is larger than the Textile Museum library. Anyway, this was a piece that Mignon family kept in the family. Then they sent it to auction at Sotheby's. We did not know exactly where it was, but Michael did further research, and it revealed to him that it was probably woven in Shirvan by a workshop that later produced the shield carpets. So basically it's a shield carpet, but doesn't have shields. He said it's the oldest one from that weaving group. And the reason he put it into that area of the shield carpets was that the red silk wefts and the yellow silk warps was what determined this origin. There was no other workshop that he could find that used these colors of silk for their foundation. On the right, you can see the border, which is extremely unique. Never seen a border like that anywhere on any rug. You see there's a bird at the top with the feathers. Then there's a yin yang device, and then there's a lotus flower. And that's repeated throughout the piece, and it's unique, and it's a really wonderful rug. It might be the most beautiful rug of the Caucasus that I've seen. This next piece is a really early, what I call a Shirvan fragment. It has cotton weft. It has this large medallion and this very interesting cartouche border. The medallion, we have a name for it, a pie crust medallion. I don't think anybody else says it's that, but that's what we call it. And it's a very fine, a very thin piece. The pile is short. Some people claim it's from the Golden Triangle, but I don't think so. I have some Golden Triangle pieces, and they're completely different. They're usually all wool construction. They usually have more nap, and they certainly have a different coloration. This is Shirvan coloration. The thinness, the cotton weft, I believe it's from Shirvan. Now, interesting enough, when I was looking through the literature, I found this piece. This is the Bardini carpet. It's in the Bardini Museum in Florence. You see that same pie crust medallion, and you see the same cartouche border. Flashback to the cartouche border and the pie crust medallion. Now, this Bardini rug has been dated to the middle of the 16th century, should be at around 1550. And the question is, what is my fragment age, and when was it made? Was it made 100 years after the Bardini piece? Probably not. Perhaps it was 50 years, 20 years, it's hard to say. I haven't had it carbon dated, but I've always felt it was 17th century, but it might be earlier than that. When I found the piece, it was in really tough shape. The cotton had corroded and eroded, as cotton will do after 200 years. And it was really kind of a really bad condition. So I had it repaired, conserved. And if you'd like to see how it was originally, it's pictured in Hawley 39, page 15, 1988. You can see what bad shape it was. It was getting worse when I bought it. But anyway, my restorer did a wonderful job on it, Haidar Sarbis. And it's a really interesting piece and a very early piece. This next is a Shirvan Afshan variant type, probably a Khan carpet, but we don't know. It has basically a Persian design, but most of the Shirvans, really 90% of them that I've seen have cotton wefts. that kind of distinguished them from other pieces that use the all wool construction. This piece, I believe, is a village Shirvan piece, 18th century. It has these archaic medallions on a red field, flanked by what looks to me like water bugs. It has a dragon derivative main border. And again, it has the cotton weft. And I believe it's a village Shirvan because the wool quality and the colors are really not that good. And it's an old piece, but the inferior wool compared to what we're going to see, and the coloration is not that great, but it's an example of what I think probably is something that some village weaver wove in her tent. This piece is a Shirvan 18th century. It's a tree of life, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it has 15 different colors in it. It's hard to see in this picture. The picture really doesn't do it justice. It just has exceptional colors and wool, and beautiful piece. This is a prayer rug that's dated 1805. And this lattice design, as you can see, the field has a lattice with flowers. It's very popular throughout the Caucasus. The Caucasus, the people that wove there were into nature. And you'll see the flowers and the trees and the birds and the animals and all sorts of things that they like to put in their rugs, which really endear them as folk art to we collectors. And this is a nice piece. It has silk flowers over the mihrab, and it's really in really good condition for its age. This next piece is another prayer rug. I believe it's circa 1800. It's the oldest one that I have examined with this design. I'll do a close-up on it so you can see the beautiful colors that it has. Now we're looking at the Marsalis. The Marasali is a village south of Shamakha. Shamakha was the capital of Shirvan. They turned out absolutely wonderful woven pieces, high knot count and so forth. And these large stripes and the tribal influence, the floral border. You can see some geometric Marasali birds on the yellow ground. I think it's probably a Khan's carpet because the quality of the wool and the colors, 18th century piece, startling. This next little prayer rug has a date on it, 1812. It has silk wefts, cotton warps, fine weave. It might be considered the best of its type. You can see, I'm going to go to a close-up of it. You can see the mihrab here. And one of the things the Marasalis like to put in designs are geese, the red geese on a yellow field. And you'll see that in borders. You see it all around this piece. And the geese are one of the things that are very popular in the Caucasus. I'm told that thousands of geese fly over the Caucasus every year from Africa going to Russia. And the geese here are a little bit more geometric than some of the other geese. I might refer you to my book, my Caucasian book, plate 7, where I have another early Marasali, and the geese are more prominent. Later on, these geese, the weavers don't quite know what they are, and they sort of become blocks. The plate 7 of my book really shows the geese feeding in the back of the geese and so forth. This next piece, the dealers always called Field of Flowers. That was the design. They thought this was a meadow with flowers, and it was supposed to replicate the meadows in the Caucasus. And you can see those many different flowers and talisman and so forth. It's hard to see that main border, but the main border has a device which we will talk about later, this heraldic device of the Shirvan Khans. This little piece, basically birds in flight in the field, and a comparable rug probably from the same village with the same design, with a date of 1850, sold at Sotheby's, New York, December 5th, 1987, lot 90. So that helps us date this piece, which is very similar. Has really excellent wool, and it's finely woven. This next Shirvan piece is somewhat unusual in that the field is, as you see, with one little device in it. The border, it borrows from the Ottomans. You'll see 17th century Ottoman pieces with that same 4 leaves coming together with a diamond in between. And it's probably early 19th century. And it has somewhat of an Ottoman influence as far as the border is concerned. It's one of the things that the weaver borrowed from the Ottomans. Very colorful Shirvan. This is kind of a traditional Shirvan with basic, beautiful colors, multiple colors, and the finest dyes. As I said, they had the money, they had the influence, and they could afford to make really wonderful rugs with beautiful colors. The border is actually a geometric bird, we believe. I have a Kurdish rug in my Kurdish book that has the bird is really pronounced in the border. And this is another typical Shirvan from the same area. This design was very popular, and it was reproduced all throughout the 19th century. This is an earlier piece. It has this very intricate border. The later pieces did not have that type of border. As I said, the rug, in my opinion, production deteriorated throughout the 19th century for a variety of reasons, including what the Russians were doing. They commercialized it, and they made a business out of it that was using sort of inferior wool and not as many colors because they wanted to make money. They weren't weaving these rugs for the beauty of them all. They were weaving them to make money. So this design in the middle goes through the 19th century, but the later pieces do not have the color or the intricacies of this early piece. This is another Shirvan. It's a very interesting design. These are camels. You can barely see their humps. 4 camels going basically around. You have the Memling gulls, which was borrowed from the Ottomans. You have this interesting border, so forth, goes around here. This rug is reproduced throughout the 19th century by other groups, not just the Shervans, but they become basically a Southern Caucasus, they do them, and even some in the Kazakhs. But the later pieces have, they don't have the close cropped nap that this Shervan does. And this piece has the cotton weft, and the later pieces have a wool construction, both warps and wefts. The later pieces also do not have this geometric tree device that divides these Memling gulls. So they reproduce everything else, but they leave out these trees. But this is a very early piece, probably circa 1800. Now we go to the Oxtafa. The Oxtafa is a Shervan product. You can see those birds, those are called Oxtafa birds. It's an early piece. I'm going to flash to a small portion of it at the top. It gives you the, shows you the intensity of the coloration. My Oxtafa birds have their mouths open, which I have not seen any of the other Oxtafas with the birds' mouths open. There's probably some out there, but it's kind of an interesting development. This is a device of the Shervan Khans. It's a heraldic device. These are arrows coming off this middle. And this particular group, the Shervan group, there was other groups in Shervan besides the Khans groups, but this is a mark, I believe, of the Khans heraldic device. You coming down, you see a person with a camel, both sides. And interesting enough too, is that the camels have carpets on them. They have the little saddle covers. And usually the animals in these rugs do not have saddle covers on their animals. But here's a fellow here, he's riding the camel. You can see the really intense colors, the green, and all these different little things going on. Now, the weaver of this piece, I think, is a master weaver. You'll notice this border, by the way, is what they call a Kolchak border, and that's borrowed from the Turkomans. And each one of these things are a little bit different. You see here, they have an animal in it. The details in this rug are incredible. And here's some deer down here. You can see the antlers. Really nice piece, early, colorful, so forth. Here's another piece. You see that same heraldic devices again, which tells us that it's a Shervan. And this basically, you'll see this design, some kind of a archaic design, probably tribal design, goes way back. You see that replicated in some of these Shervan pieces. Here's an even earlier piece with large Memling gulls. And again, your heraldic devices, it tells you what it is. I reiterate, the Shervan people probably wove the most intricate and most expensive rugs during the time, especially during that 80 years when the Khans had control over their territory. This is another early piece. This is a garden type carpet. You see the pools of water. You see tree forms, flowering shrubs. These flowering shrubs actually come from Persia. Some of the really old Persian carpets have these shrubs with flowers on it. You can see the heraldic device that tells us that it's a Shervan. tree forms, nature. And that's really what we're talking about in the Shirvan pieces, as well as most of the Caucasian pieces. They want to replicate nature. They want it on their floor. They want it on their walls. This is the beauty of this Caucasian rug situation. Now we move on to so-called Bijov. Bijov was a village in Shirvan, northern Shirvan. Some people think they're actually Kuba rugs. They're very rare, so there's not a lot of them around. This is an 18th century one. We could call it a proto-Bijov. It has what they call a rising design. The rising design is rising. I don't know. I don't see rising design, but that's what they call it. It could be that these devices are bats. And I think I'm the only one who has that opinion. But you can see some kind of bat forms, and then they get larger and larger and larger as they go up. Beautiful colors, very simple, very effective. Now we're looking at a Bijov sumac, 18th century. And it's kind of beat up, but it's really quite beautiful. And it has this nice coloration, early border, a lot of presence, this piece. Now here's an 1850 example of that Bijov pattern in the sumac form. And you can see it still has really interesting colors. This border is very unusual. You have these arrows going this way, so forth. And this meandering kind of vine border going up. Very beautiful little piece. And now we'll go north to the Kuba area. This is a workshop piece from Kuba, probably second half of the 18th century. Now we're borrowing from the Persians. This particular design emanated in Herat early on, 16th century. When Herat was taken over by the Afghans in 1722, the people with means and the weavers fled, and most of them went to Northwest Persia, where they continued on with the design. Now, these designs, you have this particular piece, which is kind of a crenate or crenated scallop medallion. It looks like it has cogs of a machine later on, but it's a crenated medallion. And we'll see this piece replicated in the Caucasus with village weaving and khans weaving and so forth. Then we have this trapezoid figure, which with lilies coming out. This is, I say, a Herat device, Northwest Persia and into the Caucasus. And these lilies, you can see the stamens, the pistils coming out of the flower. You'll see this later on in the Caucasus and village pieces and so forth. Then there's this other design. It's an archaic design, and I'm not sure exactly where it comes from other than Herat. But this is a nice little piece. I understand the other half of it's in an Italian collection, but this is enough of a fragment. Beautiful, beautiful reciprocal trefoil border. And the coloration is wonderful. I put it in the Kuba area because it has a cotton weft And the pieces that were workshop pieces from Southern Caucasus tended to have wool warp and weft. Here's a con version. You see the cogs again going on. You see the trapezoid with the lilies, and the con is copying the workshop pieces. This rug belonged to Berger, and when I first saw it, he was reweaving parts of it. And we know Berge as one of the greatest dealers in the history, but we didn't know that he could also restore his rugs. Anyway, I fell in love with the piece. I said, Berge, I've got to have this piece. He says, well, I'm not done with it. I said, I don't care. Sell it to me. And this is an 18th century piece, and you can see how it derives from the workshop pieces. Now we're going to 1800, the Karagashli area, so-called Karagashli. It's a village on the coast of the Caspian in Cuba, and very colorful piece. Again, you see the cogs bordered. These are little flower pieces that you'll see the flower with the stems and what have you. And this is very popular, a village design that these people have copied. It has this wonderful border. These are being called reptile snake things, these S's with the bars. I don't see reptile snakes, but that's what the big boys call it. But again, you can see the coloration in this circa 1800 piece is wonderful. This red is just fabulous. Here's another workshop fragment. Again, I believe from the Cuba area because of its construction. This border design is copied from a Persian early 17th century carpets. It has all these floral devices in it. You can see birds in flight. And all sorts of colorful, beautiful colors. Just a fragment, but enough of it to satisfy you. Now we're looking at a little Cuba prayer rug. It has 2 dates on it. I'm going to flash to the inset here. We can see it a little better. There's 2 dates on it, and one date is 1758, and the other date is 1788. I don't know why this is, whether it's commemorating a marriage or some other type of thing, but you see the spacing of this early piece is really quite nice. The wine cup and leaf border is really done well. And these little flowers that throughout here, you see that if you can see the 3-pronged pistil that's coming out of the flower, which comes out of a regular flower, which is a little device that is ignored later on, but obviously the weaver, it's more intense work to do this type of thing. Some people think this design or what have you is a Dagestan piece, which it may be, but the reason I put it into the Cuba area is I have another early Cuba piece in my book, and it has that same flower with the pistil device coming up, and it has a seashore border type thing. It's difficult really to determine some of these prayer rugs where they come from Shirvan or Cuba or Dagestan, because they all did prayer rugs and they all had similar designs. This next group, so-called purpudil, this is a proto-purpudil, 18th century. You can see a tulip. Tulip was discovered in the Caucasus, by the way, and became the rage, as you recall, in Turkey, and even the Dutch got into it. You remember with the tulip mania situation where they got up to be very expensive. But anyway, bold tulip, the ram's horns, these ram's horns are big, generous, bold. I call these fire boxes. I haven't seen them in any other rugs, but they're boxes with what I look like flames to me coming up. And this is a design that doesn't come into the 19th century somehow, now that that design gets left out. Anyway, you see this really bold piece. Now we look at an 1850 example, and it's a nice looking piece, but see how weak everything is. It's just kind of a caricature of the 18th century piece, although it's a very nice rug. But it's kind of an indication of how the designs kind of deteriorate throughout the 19th century. This next group, these names, by the way, were pronounced by Sherman in his book, and he called this group the Conagans. This is a Conagan prayer rug, dated 1834. And it's a really nice little piece. But when I got together with my rug collector friends, one of the questions we always had is design. What are these designs? And nobody could figure out what in the world this design is. There's a very similar design. Some people think it's vines and leaves and stuff. I didn't see vines or leaves. Plus the majority of these pieces, very few are red back, but the majority are black and white, blue and white actually. They don't have a lot of different colors in them like the rest of the prayer rugs. It's just blue and white, white on blue, blue on white. A mystery until I found this 18th century piece, and all of a sudden it became clear to me that design is actually a falconer. Here's the falconer. Here's the glove that he wears, and here's the falcon. And it's blue on white, white on blue, so forth. And I think this is the proto Conagan from the 18th century. Nice thing about these Caucasian rugs is that everybody can see different designs and everybody has a different take on it. But I think this is the falconer design. That's what the Conagan's about. This next group is the Chi-Chi group. People love these Chi-Chis. They're very finely woven. They have these beautiful geometric flowers and so forth. This piece has this very interesting chartreuse green. It's kind of unusual, but it's a very early piece, very finely woven, probably circa 1800. The Chi-Chi is very identifiable. It has this bar and flower border, and you can see the flowers and the bars, and that tells you, when you see it, it's a Chi-Chi. This is a sumac variety of a Cuba. I have the pile piece was in my book, a Caucasian book, and this is the sumac version. The rug experts feel that this is a dragon type of thing going on here around this big flower. Has a very intricate border. As I said before, this in my first talk, the sumacs were a village production. The people made them for utilitarian purposes. They weren't for sale. They didn't really have a market, but the people used them to sleep under and to use as tabletops and as seating things. And they had these weft threads that came 3 or 4 inches behind, so they gave a soft appearance. The weft would also retain the heat at night. These cold places they would put the sumac in front of the fireplace and get it warm and then sleep under the piece at night. I had the pleasure of doing that one time in cars, and it was like sleeping under an electric blanket. The Alpan Cuba is another variety. Cuba, this is an early piece, probably circa 1800. Heavily saturated yellows and greens, excellent wool. You have these hexagonal polygons that are around a central medallion. It harkens back to the Armenian silk piece, the 17th century piece. It has a similar design. And if you remember the Armenian silk piece, it had protrusions like this going off of the hexagon. These look like claws, so some people think they look like crawfish or something. But anyway, this is an ancient design. Little face up on the coloration. You can see the black is all corroded. The black is made in early times with iron filings put in to enhance the color of it. And over 150 years or so, the iron filings corrode the wool and you come out like this. But you can see the intensity of the yellow, the colors of this piece, early piece. Here's a sumac version of the same Alpan. It's probably 18th century. Got a very early border. Same coloration, these wonderful yellows and greens and blues, so forth. Lucky to have this piece. All right, so this piece is like gold. This Cuba rug with the very finest of wool. When I'm talking about wool quality, when you went to have a rug made, whether you were a Khan or businessman or whatever, you would go to a workshop and the proprietor would say good, better, or best, or words like that. I use good, better, and best because that's what Sears and Roebuck used to say about their products. You could buy the good one, or you could buy the better one, or you could buy the best one. This piece is the best wool. Now, the best wool, the most expensive wool, was the lamb's wool because it was so soft. And the softer and the better the wool, the better it takes to coloration. And next best was the tummy wool from the sheep because it didn't have the wind and the rain and the sun that the top of the sheep had. We're going to do a close-up of this piece, and you can see the quality of the wool here. It's like gold. Beautiful piece, great border. This little piece is very interesting. It's a vase carpet, a Cuba vase carpet. Now, the Cuba vase carpet is very rare. Over the 60 years I've been collecting, I'd never found one with this coloration. Most of the ones, which were very rare, there weren't many, had darker colors, and I just didn't react to it at all. Now, this little piece came up for auction. It's Skinner's recently, and it's an early piece. You can see the vase has this wonderful color here. People are wondering what these things are coming out of the vase. This early piece shows you it's definitely a lily. So it's a vase with a flower coming out. Then you have all these beautiful little narcissus flowers, and the coloration is wonderful. And I might say to you rug lovers, this piece, it's a fragment, but it cost me $550 at Skinner's. Looking for years for a piece, and all of a sudden it appears with the old colors, the great colors. And it reminds me that the rugs are really, really inexpensive compared to other art. I was reminded of this a couple of weeks ago when some wealthy person in New York was getting a divorce and put their paintings up for sale, and the 60 paintings up for sale went for $550 million. My son sent me 10 pictures of some of the pieces, 30 million for this one, 40 million for this one. One piece was a complete blank, white blank, $42 million. I said, what in the world is happening? And this art that we're looking at today is so inexpensive and it's affordable. We can always all afford this type of work. And to have this little piece come to me for $550, it's just, you just have to be very observant. You have to look at a lot of rugs. You have to follow the auctions. A rug rabbit, you see these really wonderful little Jaff bags now going for $400 and $500, great wool, so forth. So we are lucky, very lucky to appreciate this art. And for me, this three-dimensional art is so much more interesting than these paintings, these one surface paintings. These pieces, the change every hour of the day as the light changes, as it reflects and refracts on the wool and the depth of it. Anyway, so much for the sermon. Here's another Cuba piece, wonderful wool, interesting designs. Now we'll turn to Dagestan, which is north of the Cuba area. Now the Dagestan area is very mountainous, mostly, and the people who live there are sort of mountainous type people. There's pockets of not mountainous areas, but most of the people live in the mountains, and they have a kind of a rougher, if I could describe it that way, look to their rugs. The pieces are they're kind of more tribal. They have a stiffer handle. The warps are depressed. They don't have a flat back like the Kubas and the Shirvans. And as you probably know, it held out against the Russians until probably 1860 with Shamil and his group, because the Russians could not get them out of the mountains. They were up there and they weren't going to leave. Here's what I call a Dagestan prayer rug. Dr. Sherman had a piece that looked like this, which he called Chan Karabagh. So everybody thinks that if they see this design and what have you, it's a Chan Karabagh. And I don't know if his piece was a Chan Karabagh, but this piece is definitely not. This is not a Karabagh rug at all. It has the short clipped nap. It has the coloration of different than what they used in the South Caucasus. We'll take a close-up of it. This little white field border, that is a very, very, that design is very popular amongst Shirvan and Dagestan, but it doesn't appear in the South Caucasian pieces, the Karabaghs. It's dated 1798, so it's an old piece. Interesting enough, the field design is a design that you'll find on the borders of rugs on the Eastern Caucasus. It's a flower, stem, and a bud. And this weaver decided to use it as a field design. Nice little piece. This is another Dagestan prayer rug. It's again, it's got this lattice with the flowers, which, as I say, is popular all throughout the Caucasus. Has a very archaic border. I haven't seen that border in any other rug. And it's coarser and denser than the Shirvan and Kuba, depressed warps and so forth. Nice little piece. Love these long prayer arch rugs. You see, when the Russians were turning these out by the thousands, and later in the 19th century, even the prayer rug design, the mihrab gets shortened down and so forth. The colors just aren't the same. This is a what I believe is a Dagestan sumac. I put it in here because it just has wonderful things going on throughout, talisman and animals and all sorts of designs and so forth. And the woman that did this, I mean, obviously just jam-packed with things. It has this early border, this reptile, so-called snake, dragon border, and vivid coloration. This is a type of Dagestan that's popular. It's again, we have this trellis filled with the design. I'm not sure what that design is in the trellis. We'll take a close-up of it. You can see the really nice saturated wool, whatever those things are in the trellis. And it's kind of a traditional Dagestan look. Want to look at the bottom border, and they have, the weaver has roosters going through, and roosters between stars and things on the side borders. Very folksy, very interesting, and really beautiful piece. Now we'll go over to Baku. You recall Baku kind of stuck out into the Caspian. It was taken over basically by the Russians early on. And the Baku people, weavers, have a really different coloration. You saw the vivid colorations of the Shirvans and the Kubas. This is a different coloration, different dyes being used. This piece has the botas, the large botas, which is borrowing from the Persian. It's an early piece that has a very interesting border. And it has, you'll see this red, white striped minor border. And this is a border that's used often by the people in Baku, and it helps identify the Baku along with the coloration. This early piece, you can see again, it has these botas and stripes. And you see that this border, these corner borders, this is a very Baku situation with all four of these corner pieces. Then you also see this little red and white striped minor border that I said is kind of indicative of the Baku pieces. We'll take a close-up. We can see the pool of water in the middle. You can see the birds drinking the water, some of them eating, some of them drinking. You see the botas in this piece are serrated, which is really the weaver. I mean, it obviously took a lot more time and patience to do a serrated border like this, serrated things. You can see the birds again in the border, the flowers, again, nature personified. Wonderful piece. Now this Baku has these crosses, what have you. The Armenians may claim this as their own. I don't know if it's an Armenian piece, but it's definitely woven in Baku. You see the corner things again. You don't see that in the other rugs. And you see that little red, white minor border. The coloration says Baku. This is a real variant Baku, extremely rare. This happened to be Mr. Kirkheim's piece. And I haven't seen another one of this color and intensity. The reason I put it in Baku is this border is a Baku look. Very nice colors. Now we go down to the really southern part of the Caucasus and Talish. Now the Talish was a little province of the Persians. And when the Safavids took over Persia, the Shah, the Safavid Shah's brother, was given the Talish area to rule. And it stayed under Safavid rule even after the Safavids were deposed in Persia. It's a different look. It's an elegant look with this beautiful border. This is an 18th century piece. You can see it has this beautiful red field. And this is kind of a traditional Talish look. You have the flower, you have the stems, and you have the little blossom. Now you can see the blossom here is like 3 geometric devices. And that's the blossom of this 18th century piece. And we'll go down through the centuries and see how that changes. This next piece, I believe, is even older, in the 18th century. It has wonderful colors. And you can see the border has got the blossom, the flower, the stem, but you see the little blossom is more naturalistic. It's not as geometric. The very, really wonderful piece. Design is great. Now we go to 1800. And what's introduced in the border is this box with the latch hooks. That's a start of the 19th century phenomena. Very, very saturated colors, the dark greens and reds, and real tour de force. We'll get a close up on it. You can see, but again, you see it's a different blossom and bud border. It's not like the earlier pieces, 18th century pieces. So this little design kind of goes out. It's kind of peters out later in the 19th century, but it tells you it's a Talish, this design, rather than the neighbor Mogon, which did similar pieces, but not like these. This is a greenfield piece. They come in green and yellow, red and blue fields, and the blue one seems to be the most common. The green one is fairly rare. Here's a variant. It's woven in a Talish construction. You can see it has that little box hook border. Flowers are a little bit different. And you can see the petals and stuff are quite different in this piece. Instead of having a plain field, it has these large rectangular diamond-shaped pieces. Very, very nice piece, early piece. This is an 1850 variety of the Talish. The one thing about the Talish Khan was that he managed to play off the Russians and the Persians and stay independent for quite a bit. For some reason, the Russians liked him and the Persians liked him. And so instead of the weaving tailing off throughout the 19th century, there's no indication the Russians had factories in the Talish area, and the Talish weavers continued on with quality all through the 19th century. You'll find late 19th century pieces with wonderful wool. These stripes, if you look carefully, you'll see that same box with the hooks that they used in the border, these people used in the stripes. Shows how the designs jump around and so forth. Lankaran is the capital of the Talish province. And this is a kind of a traditional design of the Lankarans. The experts say this is some kind of a dragon situation going on. I have a collector friend that thinks it's a turtle. And the turtle, because they eat insects, has swallowed this insect, which is, he believes that it's a centipede. There you go. He thinks this is a centipede that the turtle has swallowed. It's a nice thing, as I say, the fantasy that some people have regarding designs. And it could be a turtle and it could be a dragon. One thing that these pieces also have are these double eagles, eagle on top and eagle below. And a lot of these Lankarans, this is not a really early one, but a lot of the Lankarans I've seen has this device. It might be a traditional device of these people. I wanted to show this piece again. This was in my book. It's a piece I bought in Leningrad in 1970. It's a half of a really wonderful Verna type piece. You can see the dragons here are very naturalistic. There's the dragon's beaks, and you can see the dragon's tails coming down. And these people, as well as the Persians, believe the dragons have spots on them. So you can see all these scales, I guess they call them, scaly dragon. And then this piece has a camel in each, below each dragon, and a very intricate border. It's 18th century piece. It's the only one I've ever seen in the literature or otherwise, and really fortunate to find it. But if you use a lot of shoe leather and travel a lot and look at a lot of rugs, you can be rewarded sometimes. I wish to thank the people that have helped me with this particular talk today. Alan Rothblatt, who photographed the rugs for me and helped select them. My legal assistant, Jesse Okapu, who was technical advisor and has helped me through this. And my rug restorer, Haidar Cerebus, who I believe is probably one of the best in the world. Thank you.
And thank you, Jim. Another fascinating talk. We're so grateful. And let me move on very quickly because we do have some questions. We won't be able to get to all of them. There were some complaints the last time that they couldn't hear questions, the audio, so I'm going to try to be really loud. And anyone who finds me too loud, please turn down the sound on your own computer. Everybody has their own sound controls. So without further ado, Jim, why do you think that saffron was used to dye the wool on Caucasian rugs? The questioner thinks it's a very poor fugitive dye and it's expensive. So why did they use it?
Yeah, saffron was very expensive. As you know, it's the crocus produces this dust, and it's very, difficult to extract, and it's difficult to grow, but it does produce the most intense and most beautiful yellows. There's other things. I mentioned the wildflower, which the mountainous people used because the wildflower grew in the mountains. It didn't have the intensity of the saffron. And as you know, if you try to buy saffron, it's very expensive, unless you're in the Kapalı Çarşı in Istanbul, which is what I recommend every tourist buy some, because it's really inexpensive there.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to try to be succinct so that we can try to answer more of the audience's questions today, if you would, please. Do the Shervans also have cotton warps, please?
There are Shervans that have cotton warps.
Good to know. All right, this is one that you will not be able to do justice to, but let's have a succinct try. What is the Golden Triangle?
The Golden Triangle basically is an area between Eastern Anatolia, the Caucasus, and Persia. And it's an area, a lot of Kurds there, and it's called the Golden Triangle. And there are rugs that are produced there, very beautiful rugs. In my investigation of it all and the pieces I have from there, they have an all wool construction. They have a moderate pile, not a low pile. And they have different coloration, but they're woven by different groups. So probably a lot of them are Kurdish pieces. The Kurdish groups really didn't get much justice by the rug historians. They seem to downplay them. If you read my Kurdish book, you'll see beautiful rugs that they produced, but they really never got the recognition that they could, for a variety of reasons, which I won't go into. But that's the Golden Triangle, and it's a kind of a variation of different things that are hard to describe and say these are this or these are that. And so they just say Golden Triangle.
All right, John Thompson said in the New York Haji Baba's 75th anniversary catalog that there is no basis for distinguishing the rugs of Kuba and the rugs of Shirvan. Do you agree?
There's no what?
There's no basis for distinguishing between Kubas and Shirvans.
Yeah, you know, John really had a lot of ideas that, you know, people don't accept. I mean, he was really a wonderful guy. He had a great Turkoman collection. I'm not sure he knows that much about Caucasian rugs, but as you recall, he was giving lectures around the world, and he was recommending my book to all these people. So I can't say enough good things about him. But as far as Kubas and Shirvans, it is difficult. You know, Kuba was part of Shirvan, basically. It was just like a northern part. And the Kuba pieces, there's certain things like the Seychur border the Kubas have that the Shirvans don't have. If you look at the coloration, you can see a difference. I mean, you have to really be into this to distinguish some of these pieces, but they all wore sort of similar designs. But the Kuba pieces seem to have a velvety kind of a wool, where the Shirvans were kind of a harder wool. And the Shirvans, they had, as you know, I showed some Shirvans with that, which I called the heraldic device. I don't think John knew about that, but.
Okay, let's move on to another question about attribution related to Kubas. And if we could flip back to slide 54, which has many design features as seen on Kuba prayer rugs, but you attribute it to Dagestan. Could you please explain?
All right. Yeah, this piece I think is Dagestan. Why? It has a depressed warp. That doesn't mean everything, but it's one thing. It's a little rougher look, if I can describe it that way. The border is a kind of an archaic border that I've never seen in Shirvan pieces. And it just has a kind of a look, more of a Dagestan to me.
Okay,
People, nice things about it, people can see whatever they want to see in these things, and we don't have any records, they're all destroyed.
speaking of seeing what people want to see and a little bit of controversy. So you, on several of the Marasali, on one particular Marasali rug, you see the border as filled with lovely geese.
That's right.
The earliest Marasalis, our questioner postulates, borrowed and copied directly from 18th century shawl borders patterned with rosebuds. In the years that followed, our questioner thinks the pattern degenerated.
Your question is pretty convoluted, and I don't understand. Perhaps you could shorten it down so I can understand your question.
Okay, well, let's first of all invite the questioner to email you. And
you're talking about the geese, and I see
direct
geese there
exchange.
because that early piece that I have in my book, the geese are very prominent. You can see them feeding, you can see the backs of them, and so forth. Plus, it's always a red geese or whatever the device is on a yellow ground. And that kind of distinguishes the Marasali pieces, if that's what the question was.
Thank you. Can you comment, another dye question, on what makes a great red, what the dye source was for the best reds in Caucasian rugs in your collection?
Well, most of the reds were madder dyes, the madder plant, which was easy to grow and was very popular. As we talked about in the earlier talk, the Armenians liked the kermes dye, that was an insect dye. I was interested to see them actually still using that somewhat. This kind of a little bug that grows on oak trees, sometimes in marshes. And what they do is they take it and they fry it on a pan over a fire, and then they put it in a mortar and grind it up with a pestle, and get this, and it has a beautiful sort of a pinkish red dye. But most of that was very hard to find, because it was most of those bugs were over by the Mount Ararat area of Armenia. But madder is probably in different shades of madder. And the early dyers were master dyers. They were a profession. They were most expensive part of doing a rug was paying the dyer. And the dyer had his recipes, which he would never share with anybody except for his son. And it was a family tradition. And the early dyes were absolutely wonderful concoctions. And then when the artificial dyes started coming in 1860, the weavers, because they were so cheap, they changed. They went from these beautiful dyeing things to these artificial dyes, aniline dyes and so forth. And it was probably 10 or 20 years before the aniline dyes faded to horrible colors that they wanted to go back to the original dyes, but all the dyer profession had gone bye-bye. And so that's what's happening with those dyes.
Well, thank you, Jim. This has been such a fascinating presentation, as was your first one. Before we leave, can we advance the slides to the last slide? I do believe that your email is on that last slide, and that there are some questions that we can't get to, and others in the audience who might like to be in touch with you.
Well, I'd be welcome any observations or questions. As I said, to me, this is a wonderful art, and it's so inexpensive compared to other art, and anybody can afford these pieces. And they really, I think, are much more tactile, beautiful. And I've had 60 years of enjoying these pieces. And so anybody wants to question, I'll be trying to get back to them as soon as possible. And thank you, kids, for this webinar.
It's been a great pleasure, the New England Rug Society, to host you, a pleasure and an honor. And as one of the members of our audience put it today, you have reminded us of why we do this. So thank you.
Thank you.
And a last mention, we will be taking January off from New England Rug Society webinars. We will have one on February 12th on MOLAs. And anyone who has attended any of our webinars will receive an invitation. And for those of you interested in seeing rugs in person, you can contact Brian Morehouse, who spoke on a webinar before Jim's first one and is the organizer of Rug Collectors Weekend. And I think there's information on Facebook for that. So again, thank you to everyone, and especially thank you to Jim. It's been absolutely glorious seeing your collection and being able to listen to you for these 2 sessions.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And bye to everyone.